Okay, welcome to another video. So I thought what we could do today is take a look at the popular Arch-based distribution Manjaro, which have just released a brand new version 21.0 and it's called Ornara. So this update is across all of their main desktop environments that they have on offer, which are of course GNOME, KDE and XFCE. So over the next few days I kind of hope to look at all of them, but for today we're mainly going to focus on their KDE version. So reading a little bit from the announcement, our KDE edition is all about upgrading the looks and usability of Plasma. Find, reach and run your apps faster and easier than ever with Plasma's new app launcher. The new launcher features two panes to make it simple to locate your programs and comes with improved keyboard, mouse and touch input, boosting accessibility across the board. Plasma System Monitor is a brand new app for monitoring system resources. KDE is pushing to have first-class support for Wayland, and Plasma 5.21 makes massive progress towards reaching that goal. Very nice. A new page to the system settings has got added, the Plasma firewall settings, and I haven't actually checked this out yet, so I'll be quite intrigued to see how that's been implemented. This configuration module lets you set up and configure a firewall on your system. The media player widget's layout has been improved and now includes the list of applications currently playing music in the header as a tab bar. Another upgrade is that the album cover now takes up the whole width of the widget. So the ISO size for the KDE version is 2.8 GB. And with that being said, let's jump into the installer and check things out. Right, so here we are in the live environment, and the installer is of course Calamares, which has also seen some new improvements in this most recent version of Manjaro. Okay, so British English is indeed the language. Let's go to the next step. So we're not in New York, we are right about here, which is Europe, London. Next. Okay, English UK is the correct layout, and let's just use this box just below to make sure that our keyboard is working as it should, and then go to the next step. Okay, so here's where we're going to start to partition our drives. Now what we are going to do is change the storage device to the Drevo X1 SSD. Now we're going to do the straight erase disk, which is going to let the installer create the partitions for us. And on Manjaro it does give you the option of how you want to choose to configure your swap partition or your swap file. So as you can see, we can go with no swap, so we can have no swap whatsoever. Or we could have swap without Hibernate, so it'll be a small swap. And then we can do a swap with Hibernate, which is going to expand it and make it large enough to suspend to disk with full hibernation. And then we have swap to file, so we don't have a partition at all, it's just going to create a swap file in your root directory. What we're going to do is go for swap with Hibernate, because we like to check those things out. That will of course give us three partitions, one for our swap partition, one for our EFI partition, and then the rest is all assigned to your root partition with ext4 as the default file system. Next. Okay, user account time, so we'll keep this super simple and just call this one KDE. Type in our password and confirm it, and as we always do, we're going to log in automatically and use the same password for the administrator account. Next up is the summary. So I noticed we didn't have the option to choose a sort of an office suite of applications in the actual installer, and if I remember correctly we did used to have the choice of either LibreOffice or FreeOffice. So I'll be interested to see if there is one pre-installed once we get to our desktop. So as soon as we press install now, the installation will begin and I'll be back once it's finished. Okay, so the installation has complete and we really wasn't waiting around for any time at all. I'm always just pleasantly surprised at just how quick Manjaro is to install. That barely took 2 minutes. So what we're going to do now is reboot and check out our fresh installed Manjaro Linux featuring KDE. Okay, so here we are, fully installed and at the desktop. Now before we start taking a look around at things, we do have a few packages to go ahead and update with a total download size of 128.4 MB. So I'm going to go ahead and run this update, pause the video and come back once it's finished. Okay, so we are now all up to date and should be good to go. So here we are at the Manjaro welcome screen, and we're just going to disable that for launch at start. But while we're here, there's not a whole lot going on here, so we do have a few links to some documentation, support and project links. And then just below it we have this button called Applications, which has sort of a common selection of applications you might want to install with a couple of simple clicks. So if we open that up, you can see you have categories for browsers, email, office clients, video, movie, etc. Now I don't know if we do actually have an office suite of applications installed out of the box, so we're quickly just going to check what options it gives us here. So we can get free Office or the fresh or still LibreOffice, and then we have MS Office Online and only Office desktop editors. which leads me to believe we probably don't have any Office suite of applications installed out of the box, so we might come back to this in just a moment and install LibreOffice. But with that out of the way, let's go over the desktop very briefly. So you get quite a nice simple implementation of KDE Plasma on Manjaro, with a single panel layout and your panel is at the bottom. Now it's quite a large size, I think perhaps maybe 40, 45, so I'd probably drop that down to about 36, but to make things easier for the video we'll leave it at that larger size. Now in the right we have our clock as well as our system tray, and in clicking that button we can then expose it to see more status and notifications. We have our connection, our volume, and then we have a little button here to then expose a drop down terminal, and then if you press F12 you can also do the same with that shortcut key. And of course anything running in here, so like a command or htop for example, will run in the background. So if we press F12 to get rid of it and then press F12 again, we can still see htop running there in the background. So while we're here we can see that we're currently using just short of a gig RAM, and there is our nice large swap partition which will be large enough for hibernation, which we'll test towards the end of the video. So with that out of the way, let's keep moving. We then have our little update notifier here, and then we have the Manjaro settings manager, and here is where you can do things like install additional language packages, different kernels, as well as your locale. So if we go into kernels, you can see it's a very simple sort of process to go and install some different kernels, but we're going to stick with the default that it's shipped with, which is 5.10. We'll double check that in the system information in just a moment. We then have our waste bin icon as well as a show desktop icon, and then we have our icons only task manager. We have a couple of pinned applications of Firefox and Dolphin as your file manager, and when we have the workspace switcher that's going up and down, and then we have our application launcher, which is the new application launcher they mentioned in the release announcement. Now if we just go on to show alternatives, we also have the option to have a application dashboard, which is the full screen application launcher, which also gives you access to the widgets, the application menu, and then the simple menu, which I actually quite like. Right, so before we take a good old look at the new application launcher, the versions of things that we are shipping with is KDE Plasma version 5.21.3, the kernel version is 5.10.23-1, and our graphics platform is currently using X11. So with that out of the way, let's jump into our new application launcher, which I actually quite like. So we have our little user at the top here with the image, we have the search bar, and then we have access to the settings. And here it appears we can just do some simple stuff like change the icon as well as change the way it's going to sort of show your favourites. So by default you can have the grid, or you could change it to a list. We can have primary reactions there, which shows power actions, or you can do the session actions. And then we can also see what the keyboard shortcut is. So by default it's going to work with 2, because pressing the left super will also summon your application launcher. But then as you can see here we have an alternative shortcut of Alt and F1, which works in pretty much the same way. So if we go into About, we can see there we go, the application launcher of 2.0. So now let's have a little look at how everything's laid out. So we have our applications at the left for the categories, and then when you go into a category you'll then get the full list of applications in the main pane here. And we also have a little button here for places, which is pretty cool. So as well as showing you the sort of folders you can jump to, it does also show some applications for KRunner, system settings, and info center. And this should just work with a simple click and then open you up into that directory within your default file manager, which of course is going to be Dolphin on KDE. And there we go, in our home folder. So I quite like that. And now let's just keep it moving and see what else we can do. So at the bottom here we have our sort of action button. So we have sleep, hibernate. So it's quite nice that we can very simply do a hibernate or sleep straight from within there with a couple of clicks. Restart, shut down, and then pressing that will then give you some more options to get to your lock screen, log out, or switch user. So what we're going to do then is we're very quickly going to run through the applications. We won't spend too much time here because I don't think too much has changed in this department since the last time we checked out KDE on Manjaro. So starting in development we have the Qt Assistant, Designer, Linguist, and in the QDBus viewer, as well as the user feedback and console. And of course we could right click on any of these to add them to our favorites, and then they will appear in our favorites tab, and if we want to remove them we could then just go to remove from favorites. Now in games we have the one package of Steam, which we will do the update in just a moment and test a little game of CSGO and make sure that's all working out of the box. Then in graphics we have a Gwenview, Ocular, and Scanlight. Internet wise, we've got quite a lot going on here. So we have the SSH and VNC server browsers. We have Firefox as our default web browser. We then have KDE Connect for all of the sort of wireless syncing with our Android phones, as long as we've got the KDE Connect application installed on the phone. We then have the download manager of KGet, the IRC client of Conversation, and then we use qBittorrent for torrent files, and Thunderbird is your default desktop email client, which I actually quite like. So multimedia wise, we have got Cantata, which I remember checking out the last time we checked out KDE Plasma on Manjaro, and I actually thought it was quite a cool idea. So we have the standard multi-user server setup. So select this option if your music collection is shared between users. Your MPD instance is running on another machine, so you can kind of do like network sharing from the way it sounds there. Or if you're like me, we can do the basic single user setup. So let's go ahead and do that now. And then it will let you choose where your default music library is going to be, but leaving it on the default of home/music is the one that we're going to use. And then we can choose with our album covers to fetch missing covers and then save the downloaded covers in the music folder. Next, and congratulations. And here we go. Yeah, so it's a very nice sort of simple and clean layout. So we have a few options to the left. We have just our library. So that'll be anything that's in your default music library. And I actually quite like the fact that we can sort of go through our library just by the folders as well. So if we've got some music, say in our downloads that we've just downloaded, we can then go straight to that folder and then play from within there as well. And then we have our playlist for stored, dynamic and smart. And then we have a few options that we can do for the internet. So we can do some radio streams. We can use Jamendo, Magnatune, quite like the sound of that. And then we have SoundCloud and podcasts, where you can add your own RSS feeds for all of your podcasts. And it's kind of like a one-stop place for your music and your podcasts, which is pretty cool, especially if, like me, you listen to a lot of podcasts. We then have devices, so any removable media that you have in here, for example, like a external drive, it should populate it there. And what we'll do is we'll quickly plug in an external drive and see if it shows up there as well. And there you can see that it has found the USB stick that we've just plugged in. So again, that's very cool that you can kind of browse local files as well as devices that you plug in. And then you also have your search function. Now we will test out some media playback with this for some music files when we do the media test along with VLC. But combining Cantata with VLC, you should have pretty much no problems playing any files that you have to throw at it. So that's your Cantata. Now let's keep it moving. So what else have we got? We have K3B, we have the V4L2 test and capture utilities, and then we of course have the best media player, in my opinion, a VLC media player. So office wise, we don't have an office suite of applications installed out of the box. I don't think that's a terrible idea though, because I guess not everyone does use a desktop office suite of applications. I tend to, so I'll probably go ahead and install LibreOffice as well from the welcome screen and show you how easy it is. Then in settings, we have the add and remove software, which is of course going to be your GUI for managing your packages. And also, if we go into the preferences here, it's quite a cool way that Manjaro does it. So they do support all of the universal packaging formats. So as you can see there, we have Flatpak that we could easily enable. Then we have Snap. And of course, one of the benefits of Manjaro being based on Arch, you have full access to the Arch user repository. Now let's close that off and keep moving. And then next up, we have the app image launcher, which I'm a massive fan of. So you've probably heard me sort of talk about app images and how I quite like them throughout previous videos. And I'm very impressed that Manjaro do ship it out of the box. I don't think there's a bigger distribution that ships app image launcher out of the box and makes it easy for a user to use app images and integrate them in your system, and we'll show you how that works in just a moment. Next up, we have the Manjaro notifier settings, the Manjaro settings manager, which is where of course you can change your kernel and all of that good stuff. And then we have the KDE system settings. Now we will spend a fair bit of time going through this because I also want to see how the new firewall module has been implemented as well. So I think that's everything in settings. Next up we have system, so here we have ZeroConf browser, HTOP is installed out of the box, KDE partition manager for sort of creating your partitions much like you would with gparted, console, ksysguard, ksystem log, kwallet manager, we have the Manjaro welcome screen, and then we have this system monitor. So it appears that we can actually get quite a good overview of what's going on our system. So we're currently in the overview sort of section here. And here we can quickly see the memory usage is at 1.5 GB, disk usage is at 15%, and the CPU's hovering between 0 and 2%. And then just below it we get some good network and system information, as well as the IPv4 and 6 connections. And then we have some network rates. If we was downloading or transmitting any information, it would then give us the indicator right about there. And then it also gives us some information about the system, which I think is pretty cool. So here you can see your KDE version, your host name, etc. And then just below it we have the applications, so any running applications. So at the moment we only have the one, which is this window right here. It will tell you how much CPU usage it's taking up, as well as your memory. And if it was transmitting any data online, it would then show you the download and upload, as well as the read write. I quite like this so far. And then we have applications, which is just a larger view of what we just saw in the overview. And then we have history and processes, which is going to show you all the background processes that are currently running, and again how much memory they are all taking up. And then we can add a new page as well. Okay, cool, I quite like that. Let's keep it moving. So that was in system. Is there anything else in here I want to take a look at? And of course we have time shift installed out of the box. But as we're using exe4 as our default file system, the option that we are going to have to use is rsync for our system snapshots. So let's go ahead and run through the wizard, create our first snapshot, and then keep moving. So it's just estimating the size, and now we can choose the snapshot location, and we're going to leave it right about there and go next. And now you can choose your intervals from monthly all the way to boot, and we're going to leave ours on daily and keep 5. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to press finish and take our first snapshot. It will take a minute or two, so I'll pause the video here and then we'll come back once it's finished. And there we go, so that's our snapshot complete, and it gives us kind of like a safe base to go back to in case anything happens, and then we can fix or make any changes we might need to. So let's close that up and then finish up with the last few applications. Then we'll do a reboot, see how much RAM we're using, and then we'll check out some of the new system settings with the firewall module. So I think that's pretty much everything in system. Of course, again, you have your drop down terminal, which we showed at the beginning. Now in utilities, you have your archiving, you have Spectacle, Kcalc, K is your text editor, etc. So of course Spectacle is what you're going to be using to do your screenshots on KDE. So let's just quickly save that to our pictures folder and keep it moving. So what we're going to do now is reboot, check the RAM, and see how we go. Okay, we are back, and system resources is looking very good. So we are using a fully fledged desktop operating system with quite a nice modern desktop environment, and it's only using just over 700 MB on a fresh boot, which is pretty decent, and this isn't a minimal installation or anything like that, so we can't really complain too much about that. So what I want to do now is go through the system settings, see what they have changed, and then check out the new firewall module. So using KRunner, we're going to go ahead and type in system settings and take a little look at what's going on. So what we're going to do is press highlight change settings to get an indicator next to everything that has changed. So for appearance, the theme we are using is Breath 2, and the application style is Breeze. Fonts wise, we are using the Noto Sans fonts and then the Noto Mono for the fixed. And I actually quite like the Noto font. I think it ties in quite nicely with the overall desktop. Icon wise, we are using a Breath 2, which doesn't look too dissimilar from Breeze, perhaps a few different colours there. And then we also have the Breath 2 Dark, the Breeze and the Breeze Dark, as well as GNOME, Oxygen, High Contrast, and Add Water. Now what we do is just going to go straight back, see what else has got a little dot next to it. So shortcuts, we've got some different shortcuts by the looks of things. So in custom shortcut service, we have Control-Alt-T, which is of course going to launch console or your terminal emulator. We then have the keyboard layout switcher. So if you wanted to easily switch your keyboard layout, there's a very simple Control-Alt-K, that's very handy. And then we have some changes to the Kwin shortcuts. So to maximize a window, we can use Meta and W, and of course Meta will be your left super key. So let's give that a go. And then I guess pressing it again will then restore it to its previous size. And then we can do the same for the minimize function, but this time we're using Meta, Alt and down. So let's give that a go. There we go, very easy and simple stuff. Is there anything else here that has been changed? There has. Okay, so the quick tile windows to the sort of corners of your screens are using a Meta, Shift and the left. And of course splitting it, just normally you will just use your Meta key, so that's quite handy. So say we wanted to do a Meta Shift right there, we can do all the corners of our screen. And then of course we can do left and right as well, dropping the Shift key and just using your super key or your Meta key. Pretty cool. Okay, what we're going to do now is jump into Plasma and see if there's any changes there. So we've got an entry there for the activate task manager, but nothing is there. Anything else? So we've got a meta and tab for the activities, which will open up on your left part of your screen, like so. And then we have another shortcut to do it in the reverse order. Okay, so that's pretty much all of the changed keyboard shortcuts for KDE. Now in start up and shut down, of course, for our SDDM theme, we're going to be using Breath 2. And background services are going to be a whole lot going on there, so we won't worry about that. But while we're in here, we will change the desktop session. Oh, it's just crashed for us. Let's reopen that. Right, so we're just going to go back to the desktop session, because what I like to do for my desktop session is have a new blank canvas when I start up. So instead of having restore previous save windows, I like to start with an empty session unless I'm resuming from hibernation and then continuing with the work that I was doing before we hibernated. This way, when I start up or log in on a fresh session, I'll get a nice blank canvas to start working whatever I want to do. So we're just going to press apply for that for now, and then go back and see what else has changed, and then we'll check out the firewall module. Okay, there's been some changes to search as well as KRunner, and while we're in here, we are going to centralize KRunner, and then that will make it a bit more like a free floating window that opens up in the middle of your screen, and that will make it look a little bit nicer when you're launching your applications. So I think that's all of the changes that have been made. So what I want to do now is see how this firewall stuff works. So what we're going to do is type in firewall, and nothing shows up unless it's in proxy. Okay, interesting. Right, bear with me, we'll see what's going on there. Okay, so I can see what's going on here. So although it's in the sort of distribution announcement for this new release, it's not actually a package that's installed, it's just that it's a new package. So what we need to go and do is install the Plasma firewall, and then hopefully that means we'll then have access to the firewall settings within the KDE system settings. So we're just going to open up our terminal, do sudo pacman-s, and I'm going to copy that in, hit enter, type in the password. It shouldn't be a big package, I wouldn't have thought. There we go, it's not even a meg there, so we're just going to press Y to install that package. And now, as long as everything's gone to plan, we should now have access to that module inside of the system settings. However, we will need to shut it and reopen it. Okay, let's give that one another go. So we're going to type in firewall, and there it is. Perfect. Okay, we've got to do something else, it appears. So please install a firewall such as UFW or Firewall D. Okay, we'll do that now. I do think that perhaps maybe it would have been worth just including the packages, or really quite clearly signposting the need to download these packages for a new user in the welcome screen. But other than that, I'm not too fussed about that. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and install Firewall D. It'll be a bit easier to do. So we're just going to go sudo pacman-s and Firewall D. Again, it shouldn't be a large package there, so a total installed size of 7 MB. So we'll just press Y, only take a few seconds, and now, as long as everything's gone to plan, we should now be able to reopen system settings and check out how the module for this firewall has been implemented. So we're going to type in system settings, or we could of course just type in firewall, and that should jump straight to it in the settings, which is right there. There we go. And it's worked. So here we go. Let's close this browser window. So here we go. So we can change the status. So currently we are disabled, and then we have the incoming and outgoing policies with all of the rules that we can add there, and then connections, logs, and about. So I do actually quite like the idea of having this inside the KDE system settings, because I think a new user trying this distribution out for the first time is probably going to head straight to the system settings to see what they can do, and having it there just makes life a bit easier for someone who's not too used to using Linux. But there we go. So let's close that off. Now what I want to do is do a couple of media tests, and then we'll show you how the whole app images works, and then we'll also install an Office suite of applications. So I've just plugged in my external SSD, which is formatted in the exFAT file system, and it's mounted that without any issues. So we've got a couple of media files to test out. We've got an MP4 and an MP3, and we're going to do a super simple double click test just to see what the default application or the file association that it opens with. So we're going to start with this GNOME video that we done not too long ago. So let's just skip that in, make sure that's all working as it should. Perfect. And now next up we're going to do the same with the YouTube banger of Scarlet Fire. So it should open up in Cantata as long as the file associations are set to do that. However, it hasn't, so that's opened up in VLC Media Player. So I guess if you've got a full library, you're just going to usually go straight to your Cantata or the local sort of file exploration anyway. But if you wanted to sort of have it automatically open Cantata on a double click, what you'd need to do is go into your default applications. However, it won't be on the main page. So as you can see in your default apps, you've got 4 here, which are Firefox, Dolphin, Thunderbird and Console. But what you want to do is go up here to File Associations and just type in MP3 and then expand audio, and as you can see there's a little purple music icon right about there, and there we can see that VLC is indeed what is tied to that file extension. So all we need to do is click Add, search for Cantata, click OK. And now what should happen is every time you double click something in your file manager, which is an MP3, it should open straight up in Cantata. So let's apply that and then we'll give that a go. So let's just double click and there we go. However, it doesn't seem to actually be playing. That's a bit interesting. I'll tell you what, let's close that off for a moment. I'm just going to copy this into my music folder and we'll play it locally and just see if there's something going on there, why it doesn't want to play. Let's just paste that bad boy right about there. And now let's do that again. So we're going to open up Cantata and we're just going to go straight into our library. And it hasn't found it yet. So we're just going to go straight into our music folder to save a bit of time. And there is Scarlet Fire. So we're just going to double click that. And is it playing? Let's press play. There we go. Maybe we just needed to press play beforehand and we didn't. But that is now playing, and that should give us time to check out the widget. Okay, so here we are on the widget, and I've purposefully also opened up the same file in VLC. That way we can see the different applications in the tabs there. So we can just switch over and then get the controls for each application. And that's actually pretty handy. And of course, if we had the album art, you'd see it right about there. And you get the artist title of the music and where it's from. So that's from the YouTube audio library. And then we could seek it to a different place. And then we have the quick options here for pause, shuffle, repeat, etc. Very nice. Right, now what we're going to do is show you how the App Image Launcher works for those of you who haven't seen it, and then we're also going to go ahead and install some applications including LibreOffice, and for LibreOffice we'll use the welcome screen to see how easy it is to install from the commonly selected applications. So for an app image, usually what you'd have to do is download it and then make it executable yourself with this command here, and then copy it into whatever folder you want and then make a corresponding .desktop file for it to actually appear in your application launcher. However, what App Image Launcher does for you is simplifies that whole process, so we'll show you how it works right about now with Etcher. So we're just going to go and look for the app image for Etcher, which is right about there, and now we're going to click that and it will give you the option to open with straight away, and it says App Image Launcher. Now the first time you do it, it's going to open up what they call the first run, and that will kind of guide you through how to set it up for the first time, and then after that you won't see the first run. So welcome to the App Image Launcher. This little helper is designed to help you improve your app image experience on your computer. It appears you have never run App Image Launcher before. Please take a minute and configure your preferences. You can always change these later on using the control panel. So what this is going to do by default is integrate it into a folder. So the actual app image application, the file, is going to go into your home folder in a folder called Applications, and then it's going to create a .desktop file for you in home/local share applications. So what we're going to do is press OK, and now integrate and run. So what we're going to do is press integrate and run, so it's going to integrate it into our application launchers and the rest of our system, and it's also going to launch it for us. So there we go. Very simple stuff, and it makes using app images a lot nicer and user friendly. Now that we know it's launched, let's go ahead and type in Etcher. And as you can see, it's right about there. So they haven't got the correct icon for it at the moment, but we won't worry about that for right now. Perhaps they just don't have one in the Breeze icon pack. But there we go. So that's all worked very nice and easy. Now what I'm going to quickly do is, because I've installed Steam now and we do want a quick sort of test with CSGO. However, my sort of game library is on a different drive. So what we're going to do is just quickly add an entry into our FS tab file. And then that way it will sort of automatically mount that drive for us and then sort of populate our library of all of the games that are on there. So as you can see there, I've commented a line called Steam to let me know that when I'm looking at the FS tab file, that's what that line is. And there is that line, which means when we reboot, it's automatically going to mount that partition in mnt/steam. So we can right quit out of that and we're good to go. So let's exit that now and install a few applications, and see how we go, and we'll also test out Flatpak. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to go back into the welcome screen, so the Manjaro hello, and we're going to test out getting a suite of Office applications straight from the applications, which is something a new user might do, you know. So we're going to go straight to Office Suites, and we're going to choose the fresh package of LibreOffice. We're going to make that selection and press Update System. But of course you could do more than once, but we only really want to go ahead and do it with LibreOffice. So we're going to press Update System, and it's going to ask you to choose any optional dependencies, which we won't worry about for now. Type in a password, and then it should ask us to apply, and then we'll be good to go. So I'll pause the video here while this is installing that, and then we'll also install some more applications. Okay, so our LibreOffice installation has complete, and there it is, right in our favourites of LibreOffice Writer. So again, it's little things like this that do make it a lot easier for a new user to get used to Linux, especially an Arch based distribution. They do a very good job at making Arch a bit more beginner friendly, if you like. So what we're going to do now is install a few more applications, and I have enabled Flatpak support with the FlatHub repositories. So first of all, we're going to get GIMP, and we're going to show you that working with the FlatHub version. So we're going to go to all, and we're going to go down to Flatpak, and then as you can see we have GIMP right about there. So we're going to install GIMP, and then we're also going to grab KDE Live, but as we are on KDE, we'll get that as a native application. And then we should be good to go, and then we'll test out a few more things. We'll try and play a game of CSGO, we'll make sure hibernation is working, and then we'll wrap it up with some final thoughts, but so far, so good. Okay, so all of our applications appear to have been installed. So what we're going to do is just make sure they're all where they belong in our application launcher. So first of all, KDE Live will always not give you an issue being there as a native application. Sometimes you do need to restart after you first sort of set up Flatpaks, but I think we should be good. So let's give that a go with GIMP. And there we go with GIMP. So what we're going to do now then is test out some CSGO kind of frame rates and make sure that's all working and what I would expect from this hardware, and then we'll test out the hibernation. So we do have a different workspace open, and as you can see there, the mounting of my separate hard drive that's got some Steam stuff on it has worked absolutely fine. Okay, so we've just jumped into a random casual game of CSGO, and we're just going to run around for a few seconds and just keep an eye on the frame rates and make sure they're kind of what we usually expect, which is anywhere from sort of 200, 300, and every now and then it might dip to a sort of 190 or something like that. But looking at it, it's looking all good to me. So we'll just run around for a couple of more seconds just to make sure we're getting no weird stutters or jerky movement. But everything is looking pretty much how it should. So I think we can wrap it up there. So gameplay is working absolutely fine and is at the level I would expect it from this hardware. So now we're just going to check out a couple more things and then wrap it up. Okay, so what I've done is I've not really made any changes to the actual desktop itself. All I've done is install one of my favourite icon packs, which is Teller, and that has found all the correct icon theming for all of these sort of universal applications we've installed as well. So for example, there is GIMP with the correct icon theme, and then we'll also test it out with Etcher, which was the app image, and there we go. So everything is working absolutely flawlessly. Now the last thing that we need to test, and something that's quite important to me to work, is hibernation. So what we're going to do is open up a few sort of different applications, and we'll also open up Writer, LibreOffice Writer, and then we'll summon a hibernation, and we'll do it from the GUI with the nice little button here in the application launcher. Now for this to work, once it resumes from hibernation, so it's going to power down almost completely off in a low powered state, and then when it starts back up it should take you to the lock screen, and then once you're in your desktop, all of those applications should be there right where you left them. So let's give it a go. Okay, so we've just powered back up by mashing the enter key on our keyboard, and it's taken us to the lock screen, which is always a good sign that hibernation has worked. So let's go ahead and log in, and as long as all of those applications are right where we left them, everything has pretty much worked flawlessly, and there we go, and there's all of the applications that we left with right back on our screen. And that is where I'm going to wrap it up with my final thoughts. Again, building upon the last time I checked out their KDE version, which I think they've even got up here so we can see was their 20.1 Micro edition. And again, very impressive. I do really quite like the way they've set their desktops up, especially for a new user coming to Linux for the first time. They have gone quite out of their way, making it a lot easier just to find certain things here and there and get you up and running. I like that it's not super heavy on resources, despite the fact that it is a fully featured desktop operating system. I also like the multi-packaging support for Flatpak, snaps, and of course app images. If I had to do one minor complaint in this version, it would be to do with the firewall thing. I think they should have either installed those packages out of the box, so had them there up and running, or just very sort of quite blatantly signposted it in the welcome screen for a new user, just to know how to actually get the system module there up and running. And maybe they do, and I just wasn't paying much notice, and that's my bad. But there we go, another successful run of Manjaro. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and if you really enjoyed it, you can join the Tyler's Tech Patreon at patreon.com/TylersTech now, and join the Discord. There's a link in the description. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.